Okay, presentation 6 in the 7-part Zoom series, November 18th, preview of a preferred future. And I'm Jan Spencer here in Eugene, Oregon. This presentation fits into a 7-part series, and it's all about paradigm shift. It's all about moving towards a term I like to use as a preferred future. And of course, we might have our own particular reasons for wanting to see something of a different future. I think we probably share a lot of those opinions. It's social, it's political, it's economic, it's environmental. So I'm sure there's a lot of common denominator between all of us here this evening. And I'm hoping that you are involved in projects like this too. And if you are, please hang out afterwards and tell us about it when we have a conversation when the presentation's finished. And as I mentioned, all the previous presentations are on YouTube, and you can go to my website, suburbanpermaculture.org, and you can have links to all the different presentations. They're all on YouTube, and there's lots of other content on my website too. So what are we going to look at this evening? There's a lot to look at. It's about lifestyle. We'll do a little look at my neighborhood here and the term allies and assets, some economics, repairing built infrastructure, eco-villages, pushing back on cars, say some things about rural areas and the convergence between ecological living and system change. That's kind of going to be a little bit of a preview of the final presentation. But these are all great examples of what people in different places are already doing, in a sense, already living in a preferred future, because when you talk about a preferred future, we don't have to wait until everybody does this. I personally don't really think that's going to happen, but the more people who do, the better. So why I'm here and doing this, and I'm not being paid by anybody to do this. I enjoy doing this. I enjoy sharing great ideas. Why I'm doing this, I consider the dominant economic system and its consumer culture to be unacceptable. It is just unacceptable to the well-being of people and planet. The planet deserves better, people deserve better, and I'm not too esoteric, but I just have to think there's got to be a reason for us being here. And if there's not some sort of transcendental reason, then we need to create our own reason. We're here to be better people, to manifest the good stuff that we all have. So in true permaculture fashion, I consider pushing back on a dishonest economic system and its consumer culture. When we push back, we address lots of different issues all at the same time. I'll get a little bit more into that. But if you want to know more, at least in terms of my own take on capitalism, one of the previous presentations was a critique of capitalism, and you can find the link to that particular presentation on my website, because I'm not going to go into so much detail this evening, but I will say a few things about our economic system, and I'll start doing that right now. The needs of capitalism are at odds with the well-being of people and planet, and these are just a few examples. The pollution, the damage to the natural world, just enormous amounts of totally avoidable public health problems. We don't need to have this many public health problems. I'm not specifically talking about the virus, but just when you consider public health and why do people get sick? Why do they go to the hospital? Why do we spend so much money on public health? Well, it's not a surprise because many of the products in the marketplace are known to damage public health, and yet they're still widely available. How many can you think of? Um, Economic and uh, political disequity. People with more money, they've got more influence. The economic system tends to concentrate economic and political power. This is a very well-known graphic right here. The affluence of the well-off countries comes at the expense of other places in the world where they're on the receiving end of our affluence. Of course, to gross national product, a scene like this is good for the economy because this creates a lot of jobs for the first responders, for the police, for the people who are going to clean up this mess, and for the doctors who are going to try to repair the injuries. The economic system considers this all to be just fine. Of course, climate change, no need to say anything more about that. A predatory commercial media that targets children. So the sum of all this to me is just an inappropriate economic system. Humans are capable of better. We're all capable of better. So these are kind of continuing. It's not only an issue of energy and resources that are wasted, for example, like in suburbia, junk food, freeways, dead zone at the mouth of the Mississippi River, clear cuts, NASCAR. There's just an enormous amount of lost human potential as well. The economy is pretty heavy on distractions. So that's just more reason for me why I feel like that we can do a lot better. And you can look at all these poor investments of time, money, and materials, and just think what we could do if we invested this amount of money and time and materials into positive stuff, into a preferred future. But we can do that in our own lives. We don't have to wait for some type of legislation to move towards a preferred future. We can do that in our own lives with our friends and our families. So here's just a quick look at, for me, if I were to offer a point of departure for a preferred future, this is what it would look like. A society that lives within the boundaries of the natural world and brings out the best and positive human potential. An economic system that is honest and accountable and serves the healthy goals of a healthy society. Wouldn't that be different? And of course, restoration of the natural world. And another realm I get a lot of inspiration from, the principles, the wisdom of the world's great spiritual traditions. Personally, I'm unaffiliated. I don't attach myself to any particular religion, but the social codes of almost all the world's great spiritual traditions, they're virtually the same in terms of care for the natural world, modesty of lifestyle, service to the community, personal and society uplift, and being responsible for our own actions. These are just wonderful ideals and principles to base a preferred future upon. And an enormous part of creating a preferred future is reducing our ecological footprints. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this, just a few minutes on this, because it's just so important. This is probably one of the core points of interest, for me it is, in terms of a preferred future. What's it going to take? Reducing our ecological footprints, reducing the amount of damage we do to the natural world. So this is a very nice graphic that I made. I think that's kind of symmetrical. I kind of like a graphic like that. Lifestyles and economy that exist within the boundaries of the natural world, that would look enormously different from what we have right now. Of course, if we were living within the boundaries of the natural world, we wouldn't have climate change. We wouldn't have species extinction. We wouldn't have remotely the amount of pollution. Humans are going to have some impact on the environment for sure, but the affluence that many people expect has an enormous amount of impact on the natural world. And the planet is telling us we can't keep doing that. And one of the aspects of our economic system that actually encourages overconsumption is the uh, the term is external cost. Most people have probably heard that term, externalizing the cost. When we buy something, the price we pay doesn't account for all the damage that product does in its manufacture, in its use, and its disposal. And that is open and shut case, guilty as charged to capitalism as we know it. It is dishonest because the price doesn't tell an accurate and honest story, and it makes everything unrealistically cheap. So that means that we can buy lots of stuff, and that's what damages the natural world. And of course, it can also damage our social conditions as well, community solidarity. So in my vision of a preferred future where the economic system is honest, everything is going to cost a lot more. Everything is going to cost a lot more. And how much more, of course, I can't say. And is this actually going to happen? Well, we'll see. But this is a critical element, is everything will cost more. It would in a sustainable society. And the more people downsizing and learning to work in common cause to make creative use of social allies and assets, the better. So in sustainability, in this graphic, there's sort of an economic side and there's sort of a social side, and they go in tandem too. In a sustainable society and economy, people will have to take greater active participation in taking care of their needs. And that doesn't mean everybody's going to be out growing cucumbers. It doesn't mean that at all. But downsizing will require, in my opinion, more people taking an active part, be less cars, and a whole host of changes in our lifestyle. And in this sustainable future, many of today's jobs and products will not make the cut. Many people have jobs and make products at the current time that won't exist in a sustainable future. And there will be new jobs as well. For example, like a permaculture general contractor for transforming suburbia. Those will be new jobs. But when I hear somebody like Joe Biden say we're going to create millions of high-paying new jobs, that doesn't fit in a sustainable future. We may create millions of new jobs. I'm all for that, and that certainly fits in. But as long as we are making so much money and products are so cheap, then the damage to the natural world is going to continue. And of course, that is completely contrary to the needs of our economic system, because it needs to grow and it needs for people to consume more stuff. So how that's going to shake out, it remains to be seen. But again, people can do a lot of this preferred future in their own lives, at home, their family, maybe with friends and neighbors, and the benefits can be now rather than in the future. I know a lot of people, myself included, who uh, who are in a sense kind of living in the future because I have a downsized lifestyle. It provides me the time to do this and all kinds of other stuff too. And maybe you're already totally into this kind of downsizing and repurposing our time and our money. And if you are, good, that's great. That's what we need. So this image here is from the home page of the Global Footprint Network. And if you don't know about this footprint calculator, this is an awesome little tool right here. You can go to footprintcalculator.org, and it's a survey, and you will be asked all kinds of questions about your lifestyle. And what is your diet? What kind of a place do you live? Your transportation? How much stuff do you buy? Just lots of questions. And then at the end, you will be provided a tabulation. How many planet Earths or fractions of planet Earth would it take for everybody in the world to live like you? And this is extremely important. It could be a jolt. I know people who are very eco-socially conscious, and they have footprints 3 or 4 or 5 planet Earths if everybody were to live like them. And that kind of a footprint we can't sustain, and it's not even a good idea anyway. So this is a map made by the Global Footprint Network. And again, I wouldn't say that everything is precise down to the decimal with their survey and what their tabulations are, but it sure gives us a good idea. I think this is probably pretty good. Are Americans 5 Earths, 6, 7, 4.5? Who knows, really? Because they have a formula that they figure this out, but it's pretty clear that we're over consuming and we're making big problems for the natural world. What this map shows is over 4 planet Earths, and of course the United States is the largest country, major country with the biggest footprint. Even places in Western Europe, Japan, Australia, these are all very affluent countries. And while the United States is, according to this tabulation, is about 5 planet Earths, places like Germany, Italy, France, they're closer to 3. Can you imagine using 40% less stuff than what we do right now? And that's still a big footprint. But the United States, of course, leads the world in the size of its ecological footprint. And again, downsizing is not what our economic system wants people to do, but it's a sensible thing to do. So this right here, this is the tabulation of a real person right here, 0.8 Earths. And this right here is, in a general sense, the lifestyle that comes up with a figure, something like this. So this person, and I won't reveal who they are, but you can probably guess, drives a car less than 200 miles a year, bikes for their primary transportation, vegetarian, almost vegan, shares a house with 3 other people, just a regular suburban house with 3 other people, minimal shopping, simple recreation, rarely on a jet plane, and that comes out to approximately a 1 Earth lifestyle. So it can be shocking. I certainly encourage people to check out the calculator and see what your footprint is. It can be the point of departure for saying, I didn't really know that. I think maybe I make some changes in how I live. The more people who do that, the better. So what would this kind of a 1 Earth sustainable lifestyle look like? It can look all kinds of ways. This could be just enormously, it certainly would be enormously creative, and everybody's an individual, so their lifestyle is going to look as an individual, their own choices. But the way I see a sustainable society, there'll be a lot more time and people involved, community engagement, and building civic culture, people being involved with where they live. Certainly, life would probably be slower, um, and you might have shared meals with friends and housemates because you might be sharing a house or a place with more people, because that's a big way to reduce ecological footprints. Of course, active transportation, and of course, not everybody can ride a bike, but that's why we have buses, and that's why we can redesign our urban places so where we need to go to take care of our needs aren't so far away. The 15-minute neighborhood, the 20-minute neighborhood, make biking safer, make public transportation better, but just redesign our urban places so cars aren't as important as they are now. And of course, shopping, a lot less shopping as well. So I'm not going to go through all of this right here, but if you take a look at the presentation on YouTube, you can spend more time on this. But these are just some comparisons I came up with the consumer culture of what we have now and a sustainable one earth culture, what would be the counterpart. Military foreign policy, I would see a mutual interest foreign policy. Instead of spending so much money on military stuff, it would be with foreign aid for public health and education to other countries rather than aircraft carriers. Instead of mowing lawns, somebody might give up their lawn mowing business and instead have a business where they turn people's yards into gardens and they share the produce with the person who owns the property, but they have a clientele of gardens instead of mowing the yard, growing food in the yard. Uh, Capitalism, let's replace that with permaculture. So that's just a few, and you're welcome to go back, take a look at that. And a lot of people might listen to this and say, good luck, what world are you living in? And sure enough, it probably sounds pretty out there, especially to people who don't think about this kind of material very often. But in my thinking, the mainstream economy and its consumer culture have had one of its most important products has been its capacity to disable our imaginations for thinking about alternatives to this society and this economic system. This is just way out there because we don't really think about this so much. Even even people who talk about sustainability, the Green New Deal, I look at that and I say, good luck. You know, I'm all in favor of that kind of a direction, but the idea of creating millions of high-paying new jobs, I don't think fits in to a sustainable future at all. Um, so this is just a little bit of a formula, prioritizing our time and money. And that's mostly what we're going to see here in a couple of minutes. We're going to see wonderful examples of what people are doing. Ecological lifestyle plus economic democracy plus political democracy can lead us towards system change and a preferred future. And actually, the final presentation in 2 weeks is going to be this particular formula right there. That's actually a preview of 2 weeks from now. So, a preferred future, allies and assets, who and what can we work with? What are the tools for moving in a healthy direction? We've got lots of tools. I can certainly be critical of the mainstream society and its economy, but the fact is, it sure has produced a lot that will be useful for transitioning in a sustainable direction. There's tons of stuff, awesome Here's Zoom right here. Wow, I am not anti-technology, not for a moment. I love it, but what are we using it for? One of the most important tools I think we have is permaculture. And most of us probably know something about permaculture. I'm not going to get into a lengthy description of permaculture. You can look this up online if you don't know what permaculture is, but it's a design system for designing ways to take care of human needs in ways that are friendly to people and planet. And some people think of permaculture as being a garden system. Well, it can be that, but we could have an economic system based on permaculture principles as well. Permaculture can apply to urban design. It can apply to social systems. It can apply to uh, eco villages. It's basically working with nature and designing for multiple benefits to design smart. That's permaculture. You can find more on the internet or find a book. There's tons about permaculture. Assets, allies, and actions. I did an entire other presentation earlier in the series that was about assets, allies, and actions. And you can take a look at that if you like, because it goes into more detail. But there's all kinds of social entities. They could be nonprofits. They could be a city program. They could be a social, like permaculture, a neighborhood watch. These are all entities that you can find in almost any community, and they can become allies for creating a more healthy, sustainable society, because almost every nonprofit organization exists in some way to try to make the community a better place to live, whether it's the environment or public health or social inclusiveness and equality. They all exist to make the community a better place, and they're all on the same team. So these are allies and assets. Faith communities are big time. Neighborhood associations, even Neighborhood Watch, the PTA, the Scouts, almost any organization has certainly the capacity to become an ally to create a more sustainable future. And this will be, again, the focus for the presentation 2 weeks from now, is engaging with these types of organizations. This is a great positive feedback loop. When you look at assets, allies, and actions, when you have actions, you do actions to create a healthier community, that creates more assets and it creates more allies. You engage people to help out with a work party, and they become part of the action. They become an asset. So this is just a really very simple kind of a graphic of a positive feedback loop of assets, actions, and allies. I like that. Okay, now we're going to shift just a little bit. I want to show and tell a few pictures of my own neighborhood here in Eugene. And I don't want to create the impression that here's ecotopia, because it's not ecotopia. Of course it's not, but there's a lot good going on here in my neighborhood. And I know there are other neighborhoods that have stuff going on I wish we had. So this shouldn't be seen so much as a boast, but we do have some cool stuff in the neighborhood. And the pictures will show a variety of small examples, small bits and pieces of a preferred future in our neighborhood right here. This is just a little chunk of the neighborhood. Of course, it's a Google view from up above. This is my place right here. This yellow rectangle is my quarter-acre suburban property. What these fuchsia colors indicate, these are all permaculture friendly properties. These are properties that people with an interest in permaculture live, And some of these properties have a lot of impressive features as well. Not every place, for example, has quite as much as what I have going on, but some of them have features I don't have going on. But we have comparatively, compared to a lot of places anyway, a small but appreciable, I wouldn't say really density of permaculture, but we do have something of networks here in the neighborhood. And you can see particularly these properties here, and actually this one here could be added, where in this particular place, people interested in permaculture and this type of alternative living, they share a property line and take fences down, you know, and start to expand out a little bit because there's that social, political, economic cohesion beginning to happen. And we'll take a look at a few other places in a few minutes where this type of arrangement is bigger than it is right here, where there's more properties doing this. So that's great to see. This is my own house right here. I bought this place 20 years ago, and the intention from the beginning was to do a permaculture makeover. This is what my property looked like when I moved in, just a mid-50s suburban house, older, never been remodeled, is kind of retro, but I've followed my own advice in what I've done here. I prioritize my time and my money into transforming this into this. So this is a lot different from what the property was when I moved in. And this is not a lot of very expensive work. I put a metal roof on the house, a galvalume roof, a solar hot water heater, turned the garage into a living space. I've done a lot of work. I've done most of the work myself because I made time for it. But what you see here is these earlier principles and ideals that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. This is what that stuff can look like in real life because I'm doing that and I know a lot of other people are too. This is one of my favorite projects. I think the cars take up a lot too much space. So I took out my driveway. This right here is what's left of my driveway. This view right here is my driveway. And of course, this little rectangle is this right here. So I don't have a driveway anymore. I do have a vehicle. I don't use it very much, but I have food, grape trellis, storage shed, English walnut tree. I have life. I have biodiversity. I have food production happening where there used to be a concrete slab right there. These are some other aspects of my place. I have a rainwater catchment system. And of course, this all makes my place a lot more resilient if there happens to be a disruption in the usual services as well. I have a 6,500 gallon rainwater system. I do a lot of food production here, seed saving and food storage, drying, all kinds of pickling. This is so much fun, you know. It's fun to combine being creative and having a positive outcome and not spending very much money at the same time, and even saving money at the same time, because the time I put into producing my own food is good exercise, it's good for the mind, it's good in just every conceivable way. But this is part of my home economics. I avoid spending a significant amount of money because I produce an appreciable amount of my needs here where I live. And of course, my place is a pretty well-known educational site. Thousands of people have visited my property over the years to see what suburbia can look like. And I have passive solar, this outdoor patio turned into an indoor passive solar space with lots of food growing in here, and helps heat my house on a cool day when the sun's shining, of course, in the wintertime. So having your own property is great, but we need to expand the scale of this kind of transformation. My next door neighbor and I decided to take this laurel hedge out. We both agreed it was a good idea. So we took the laurel hedge out and we did build a fence because the hedge was right on the property line. Neither one of us could mess with that hedge on our own because it was right on the property line. So we combined on doing that. So my neighbor planted some plum trees on his side of the fence and did some espalier plum trees. And I planted mulberry, almond, Oregon grape, blackberries, another English walnut. This is an old picture here. And this is more what it looks like now, but we replaced the laurel hedge with food production. It was a collaborative project. We both worked on it. And now the consequence, the results are we're growing food where it was just nothing but a laurel hedge before. So this is a different location. This is about a block away. And this is just a really good example of a larger property, a 1 acre property. And this expanse turned into this, a big garden. It's kind of a micro eco village at this point. We've had all kinds of community events here. So we turned this into all of this because we had lots of work parties at this location to make this transformation. Another thing we do in our neighborhood is we have site tours. We meet, like there's a park down the street from me, and we meet at the park and we go to different places in the neighborhood to see what people are doing on their properties. So the person who lives there, like Bill and his beehives, can explain to people, this is what I'm doing with my property. This place here a couple blocks away, the Heiko's front yard, the grass is gone. He's got a big food forest in his front yard now. Another location, there's probably, I would say, about 3 dozen locations within a 15-minute bike ride that have various aspects that are worth being on a tour to see what people are doing. And here's a whole different type of asset right here. Eugene has a neighborhood program. And so that means our neighborhood has a neighborhood association. That's a group that meets, we meet once a month, and we exist to address the issues in the neighborhood. That could be traffic, could be crime, could be homelessness, could be the environment. Certainly land use is a big issue, but anybody who's involved with a neighborhood association, especially if you're on the board, can help set the agenda. So our neighborhood association has put out information about permaculture and about ecological living many times over the years because that's part of our agenda. So the take-home message here is if you live in a city that has a neighborhood program, you might find out where your neighborhood association meets and go to the meeting and maybe become involved because everybody's always welcome. But this is the base of the civic culture pyramid is the neighborhood association right here, in my opinion. Another asset we have in our neighborhood is a recreation center. And this is recreation center, indoor pool, senior programs, youth programs, playground. One action we had at the rec center 5 years ago, we had the Northwest Regional Permaculture Convergence at our rec center in a suburban neighborhood. We figure 600 to 700 people participated with classroom discussions, site tours, plenary sessions, neighborhood people interested in their neighborhood associations meeting together. We had a big expo outside. This was just a wonderful event that we had at our neighborhood recreation center, a wonderful, powerful asset we have in our community, in our neighborhood. So let's take a look at a few more examples of preferred future. This also in Eugene, Some friends of mine in another part of Eugene did major work on transforming their suburban property. This is one of the best property transformations I know right here in a different part of Eugene. And of course, they're having people over so they can show and tell all the great actions that they're taking on their property. This is another picture here. There's more back on the other side of the house. It's a corner property. So down the sidewalk and then back on the far side, it's all permaculture and edible landscaping, and it's really, really nice. So that's what Matt and Jessica have done. And this is a location actually only a few blocks from where Matt and Jessica live. This is where there was would have been a street, but the street was never constructed. It was just an open space. It's public property, but it was just a grassy open space. Some people in the neighborhood said, you know, we could put a neighborhood garden in that place. So they went to the city, and the city was receptive. They said, you got to do this, you got to do that. And within 3 months of going to the city, this is what they were out here doing. And this is really great too. This is AmeriCorps right here. Some AmeriCorps volunteers are helping to do the first sort of dig up of the space. I'll say a little bit more about AmeriCorps in a few minutes, but I just really like AmeriCorps. That's great. And this is what the garden looks like some years later. It's back behind. These are all people in the neighborhood. They had a neighborhood matching grant to do some of this work too. Your city may have matching grants where the city matches sweat equity to do projects that benefit the entire neighborhood. So that's where this kiosk came from. And their tool shed back here was a neighborhood grant. They're only small, $2, $3, $4,000, and you have to match it with sweat equity. But that's what this group did in Friendly Neighborhood. And it's just a wonderful picture right there. And this is a nice picture. You can say, well, nice garden. That's kind of odd to have solar panels out in their backyard. But of course, this isn't their backyard. This is their rooftop. This is a location in Portland, and this is a rooftop right here. And so they're gardening their rooftop. And I've talked with Mauricia, who owns this, and I think she would say, before you decide to do what we did, listen to this. It's easy to idealize something that looks just so awesome like this. She says, this is a lot of work and it's a lot of expense to do this. I don't know if they would have done this if they had known how much time and effort, maybe they would have. But the story from that is you can do a project that sounds great and you can work hard and make it happen, and it still might not turn out to be the best idea. I've had to change a few things I've done here at my own place, but when doing a property transformation, or really any kind of a transformation of society and economics, best to try to get it as right as we can the first time, because good intentions don't guarantee the ideal outcome either. So this picture here is just an idealized view. When you remember that one image I showed earlier of looking down on my neighborhood, this is essentially the same picture, but all the fences are gone and we've got paths everywhere and we got food growing everywhere. And this is kind of like this sort of fantasy suburban permaculture location right here. This would be my house right here. A little bit, this is done a little bit here, a little bit here, bits and pieces of this kind of done, but most of it not. My neighbors here on my other side of my backyard fence, they're going to do a big permaculture makeover on their property. My house here, and they're working on some part of this in the early going because they just moved in. So maybe there'll be time to make the transformation. I'm not expecting it, but perhaps we manage to duck under the wire and get a lot of this work done before time runs out. So Let's take a look at some other aspects of a preferred future. Placemaking, youth empowerment, faith in action. Let's take a look at some of these. This is one of my favorite nonprofits in Portland called City Repair. And if you don't know City Repair, they've got a website, City Repair, Portland, Oregon, and you can find their website. They are all about turning ordinary places into places, ordinary locations into something special, painting murals and intersections. This is a little kid space, a Cobb pizza oven. These are just placemaking projects. Placemaking in this term is to create small constructions that attract attention and make you feel good about being there, make somebody visiting say, wow, somebody cares about this neighborhood. Look what they built. Look what they did. They care about this neighborhood, and it builds community capacity. It builds the civic culture, and it makes the neighborhood. People meet each other. People make friends. Who wouldn't turn down? You're going down the street on a bike, and you just notice a bunch of people out along the street with this pizza oven making pizza, and you just maybe sort of stop and say, "What's going on?" "Oh, we're having a pizza party. Want some pizza?" So this is all about creating community, and City Rare just is an awesome nonprofit in Portland that is well known for doing that. This is another entity that I recently became acquainted with, Onondaga Earth Corps in Syracuse, New York. And this is all about empowering young people, get these kids out planting trees, learning about gardening, learning about how to participate in their communities. I think this is just great. Onondaga Earth Corps. And here in Eugene, one of my favorite nonprofits is the School Garden Project. A lot of cities, a lot of schools have school gardens, and this is to grow food there at the school, but also, at least for the Eugene School Garden Project, teach science, teach kids how to plants grow, teach kids about diet and healthy eating. A lot of these kids go home and they educate their parents about a lot of these issues. So, and this is another also, I know Joe Biden mentioned in one of his campaign speeches the idea of increasing the size of AmeriCorps. And I am all for doing that. I think AmeriCorps is just one of the best programs that the country has. And this is a fairly mainstream, but what if a fairly mainstream program like AmeriCorps evolved into something that was a little more ambitious in what its agenda was, what its capacity was, like teaching these kids about permaculture and about all these different aspects of ecological living and social, economic, environmental responsibility. So I am all for this idea of increasing the size of AmeriCorps. I'm gonna skip a couple of these. Well, we'll look at this one. This is a real estate development group in Portland. I have no personal connection with this, but I found out about them. But what caught my eye about this is designing for reduced eco footprints. They're trying to say that they can do development and still be profitable and be responsible about it. Well, I think maybe we've heard that story before, but I think this organization, this business, may be a little more serious about it. But what also I liked about this is that they have a capacity where local people can invest money in the kinds of projects that they do to keep our money local instead of some mutual fund. You don't know where it goes. What if we could have a small but decent amount of return on our investment by investing in companies that are local, that are doing good projects that fit in with a preferred future? That's pretty good. This is a business here in Eugene, Natural Foods distributor. They source local, and they have a, a big business incubator, a commercial kitchen, office space. They don't just do a food wholesaling. This is where I get my bulk food from Hummingbird Wholesale. But they started out with a small business, Charlie and Julie right here, and they have turned it into employment, healthy employment, and a real benefit to the community as well. This is another business in Eugene. Bill had the idea to start a small garden store for the backyard farmer. So this is the backyard farmer right here. Uh, uh, Different types of needs one would have for small scale agriculture. So that's a good story right there. This is another entity I just recently became aware of. This is the Patchwork Alliance in Asheville, North Carolina. They have a website. You can look at this. But the idea here is for producers of various kinds of food and other products that are part of a healthy lifestyle to kind of collectively market what they have to offer in a cooperative way, which gives them more exposure to the community. There's strength in a cooperative effort like this. So that's what the Patchwork Alliance is about. If you want to know more, I suggest finding their website, Patchwork Alliance, Asheville, North Carolina. This sure fits in with with my thoughts of a preferred future. Just want to say a couple quick items. Faith communities have enormous potential, and a lot of faith communities are doing very important work in their communities too. Faith, remember those principles I mentioned earlier about the tradition of the world's great spiritual traditions of service to the community. That's what this is. This is the Gospel Garden in Medford, Oregon, where they serve food to homeless people. And this project here is they are building a big raised bed garden on the parking lot. And you can bet all kinds of organizations in Medford are helping out with this. This is really community building. And this is what their garden looked like a couple of years later. I've been here, I've seen that. It's really pretty impressive. This is a church about a mile from where I live. They have a substantial amount of property, and they've turned part of their property into a commercial farm. It's not big, about a half acre so far, but they have a farm stand out along the suburban street. So they do outreach to the neighborhood as well. So this is really a good story. Lots of churches, not every, but a lot of churches, synagogues, communities of faith have property. How about either putting that property to work or letting somebody in the community put a farm in, a garden in too? So this next part, urban repair. Our cities are extremely damaged because you almost have to have a car in most cities to take care of your needs. And I did another presentation earlier about pushing back on cars that will go into more detail. I strongly encourage to check that out because it's a pretty good presentation about pushing back on cars. But the urban landscape does provide a lot of opportunities. This is a process called block planning. The city of Eugene tried to get this off the ground about 40 years ago, and it never quite got off the ground. But the basic idea with block planning is when the people who live on the block and the property owners on the block agree to make certain changes to the block, then they can change their development status instead of trying to make these changes as individuals. When you do it, the term we use here in Eugene is a planned unit development. So that's a different type of development than a single property. But a block plan allows for a much more creative use of the space that exists. For example, setbacks could be different. The height of buildings could be different. Landscaping could be different. This particular configuration, this unfortunately is only an ideal. This has not happened right here. But I've talked with city planners in Eugene and they said, yeah, you know, if the conditions, this is possible. Imagine having just emergency vehicles going through here and turning all this yellow here into green space, into gardens. If people agreed that they'd be willing to park here at the end of the street instead of taking up all this space with car parking everywhere in the block, if the cars could be kind of corralled into a smaller area, that opens up the garages, the driveways, the parking for different use. This is really exciting. So I have more info on my website, suburbanpermaculture.org. I have a whole lot on my website about block planning. This is a place in Portland, one of my favorite locations. It's Kailash Eco Village. And some people bought a run-down apartment complex. Many of the units weren't even habitable. They had water damage, the plumbing broke. They did a major fix-up job on this place, Kailash Eco Village. And of course, they have a website. You can look this up. You can go to their website. You can get more of the story. But about 50 people live here. This is not where you buy. This is a rental location. So that distinguishes this from co-housing. People just pay market rent to live at the Eco Village, but they've got all this garden space here. They have a lot of shared amenities. They do a lot of outreach and collaboration with the neighborhood. I'd sure like to have something like this in my neighborhood. But the whole idea to reduce ecological footprints, a preferred future would have a lot more type of residential capacity like Kailash Eco Village. And this is Columbia Eco Village, also in Portland. This is a co-housing where you do buy in. Is it affordable? I think they have make some allowance for people who don't have quite so much money. But what I really also like about Columbia is this also took existing infrastructure and transformed existing infrastructure. This wasn't built new. This is a retrofit co-housing right here. And of course, there's a much higher level of social cohesion here and a reduced eco footprints as well. A quick look. We're getting on the home stretch here with the presentation. We've got a few more pictures to look at. But this is some highlights from pushing back on cars, because that has to be a big part of a preferred future, is pushing back on cars. This is a program in New York City. It's called the Community Plaza Program. This was a street that the people in this neighborhood decided maybe we turn this into this. And the city has a framework, it has a process for turning automobile space into community space. It might be temporary, it might be permanent. I think part of this space became permanent, but you can just see all the life that's happening here, all the community building. There are dozens and dozens of these community plazas in New York City, and probably the most well-known one is Broadway. Times Square is a community plaza. That's probably the most well-known. This is one of my favorite, pushing back on cars. This is Barcelona, Spain right here. And they have a project, Super Islas, in Catalan, that's super islands, but in English, it's referred to as super blocks. And this is a super block. The quick story is each one of these blocks might be home to 5,000 or 6,000 people. Barcelona is very densely populated. Even for Europe, it's a densely populated city. So these aren't blocks like most of us are used to. So there might be 40 or 50,000 people living in this block right here. So these are important streets. But what the super blocks do is on the exterior of the 9 block unit, these are streets that are mobility streets. You can go across town on these streets, but you can't on these. This is for local traffic only. And it's traffic that can only go like 5 miles an hour. So they're creating a lot more bikeways. This picture here shows the transformation. This isn't the final product right here, but this is an intersection right here. You can see there, that would have gone like that. That would have gone like that. This is being turned into a public space. This is being turned into a playground. And the whole idea is to improve air quality, improve the quality of life in an urban location. So this type of treatment is part of their urban mobility plan. They're also working on improving how they manage their buses and their suburban rail and also their metro. So this isn't the only part of their plan, but they are majorly pushing back on cars in Barcelona. This is a picture taken of idealized in Paris. The new mayor of Paris is very much pro-bicycle, and she was just reelected as mayor of Paris just a couple months ago. And this is sort of her vision for what could happen on a lot of streets in Paris to switch out the cars and create this kind of an urban location. These would all have been parking places right here. Of course, not everybody's excited about this because a lot of people like to have their cars, but there are going to be probably some compromises, but the way the movement is for this project, for this program in France, they are moving forward with eliminating literally tens of thousands of parking places in France over a period of time. It's a little bit like the super block, in Barcelona. It's a little bit like that. This is the Parisian version of that. Yeah, and part of this intention is to create the 15-minute neighborhood. It's redevelopment, not just getting rid of parking places, but to redevelop these different sections of the city so people can have access easier to the needs that they have instead of having to drive. They might more easily be able to walk or take a bicycle. So once again, this is to improve the quality of life in the big city. This is a picture of Copenhagen. Look at all the bikes. This should be any city. And when cities have safer bike infrastructure, then more people will bike. And of course, the COVID-19 virus has created lots of big changes in cities all over the world, including in the United States, where there's new interest in turning car space into active transportation, bikes, walking, and transit. And a big part of a preferred future is, again, turning automobile space into people space. This is Portland, Oregon. This used to be a divided highway. It was not an interstate. It wasn't that grade of highway, but it was a local divided highway. And it was decided to take it out and turn it into a park along the Willamette River right here. And this is Groningen, Holland, where there's more and more downtown areas in Europe are going car free. This is really exciting. There's lots of videos on YouTube about this type of land use. You could search Groningen, Houghton, Amsterdam, Copenhagen, and find all kinds of videos that show what European cities and some more American cities are doing as well. But the Europeans are way far ahead of us in terms of this kind of livability. They're way far ahead. So this is the last land use slide. This is a strip mall a mile from where I live. This is where my dentist has her office right here. But look at all that parking. I think the new frontier for urban design is going to be transforming parking into residential and commercial. Just imagine this could help my neighborhood have a more 15-minute neighborhood. There's a bus that already goes along here. If the infrastructure was improved for bikes, this could become much more accessible. We could have this kind of design on this concrete. Of course, the proverbial commercial below and the residential up above. This could even be more eco-oriented. Say you have some kind of car share for people who live here so they don't have to own their own car. So already in some places in the country, old malls are being turned into a redevelopment in different parts of the country. And I think parking spaces are the new frontier parking space in brownfields, better using what's already there instead of going out to the periphery. And just a couple words about rural areas. A preferred future is going to have to include a revitalization of the rural landscape with jobs, with industry, with communities, repopulating rural places. I think it's fairly well agreed that organic agriculture is a little bit more labor intensive than the giant combines and harvesters. I think a lot of people would love to live in a more rural place. It doesn't mean miles from nowhere. I mean, look at this. I don't know where this is, but it's a really nice looking little downtown right here. But this could easily fit in. Let's kind of not so many cars in our preferred future. But this could look just like this with local industries and communities rehabitating rural places with on a more rural agricultural economy. So that's most of the pictures I have. What I want to do now is just spend a couple minutes just explaining the next presentation 2 weeks from now, because I'm really excited about this. That's going to be December 3rd. When you consider so many of the environmental problems we have, the political, economic problems, public health problems, social problems, I see the growth-based, dishonest economic system that depends on selling unhealthy products, many of them to be the common denominator of just about every problem that we have. And when you think about all the nonprofits, the ad hoc groups, the social movements, almost all of them exist to address some of these different kind of problems. They're all on the same team. 2 weeks from now, the presentation is going to be about what I call the new movement that already exists, because all these organizations are kindred spirits. They're all trying to repair the damage caused by our economic system. They're all on the same team, whether they realize that or not. But what would happen if these entities, ranging from the Sierra Club to the Chamber of Commerce even, because this could be good for business, repairing our society would be good for business. The League of Women Voters, all kinds of organizations that exist to make our communities and our environment more healthy and safe. What if they all recognize, wow, we're all on the same team? How can we leverage that condition? We're all on the same team. What can we do to synchronize our actions with our membership? How could we encourage our membership to make changes in their lives that would contribute to a preferred future. So that is what December 3rd is going to be about. Once again, how does this fit in with repurposing our time and our money, with ecological lifestyles? Where does economic democracy and political democracy fit in? What does that actually mean? But this is what we're going to talk about December 3rd. This is, I'd like to think, upsizing the idea and the capacity and hopefully the motivation for moving forward in a broader sense towards a more preferred future, because it's great when a few thousand, a few 100,000 people are doing this. What if it started to be millions of people making these kinds of permaculture changes, making these kind of downsizing and community building transformations? And this idea here is intended to move that idea forward. So I invite you to participate, to join us for that meeting, for that presentation, December 3rd. And here are all the benefits. Almost anything, a preferred future. It could be good for the local economy, although the jobs might not pay so much. There's other forms of economics that don't require money. Positive human potential, safety and security, the environment, mitigate climate change, public health, empower people in the community, learn new skills, have fun as well. So I see a preferred future in true permaculture. We talk about permaculture producing multiple benefits. A preferred future can produce lots and lots of benefits. Is this going to be easy? Of course not. But I think that we'll either make these kinds of transitions or we're going to wish that we had. So that is what I have here for the presentation. And I